technical stuff.
Ready? Great, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and thank everyone for being here. Noting that all board members are here except Jack. He's unable to join us tonight. And in addition to that, we have members of the administration and our search team here. So I need first approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The first item is an item added to our agenda tonight indicating we are talking about a sixth section of kindergarten at Heritage due to increased enrollment, and we have Dan and Steve to kind of help lead that conversation with the data that we've been provided. So I don't know which of you would like to start.
So I'll just start and then turn it over to Dan. So we have been continuously monitoring our enrollment throughout the summer. As you know, we put our budget projections together, we then staff accordingly, and then continue to monitor as families enroll with Julie, our registrar. And in the last couple of weeks, we have started to be concerned with the class size at Heritage. As you know, there is a new bilingual program starting up at Heritage where bilingual students throughout the elementary attendance areas have the opportunity to attend. Dan was certainly calling our attention to it out here at Bethel, that we were getting closer and closer to the maximum capacity of kindergarten. So we started having to put students on a placement hold. So we had families coming in, seeing Julie, registering, and we were pausing where we were basically assigning them to school. So we were starting to get students that we were not assigning. So we started looking at the picture across the entire district. And so, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the prelim enrollment versus forecast for a minute. So Tim Schelt put this together for us. Tim was having dialogue with other Dane County districts about where their enrollment has been changing over the summer. And Tim put together this document that at the very bottom you see that the row called budget projections, and then you see the net. And so this was Tim's way of showing where are we at in the total line, what were we projecting, and what's the net difference. So we're referring to kindergarten right now. So if you go to the top and look at the kindergarten column, you would see right now across the district we're at 290 kindergarten students, which is a really high number for us at this point in the year. Budget projection of 268, which was based off of the 4K enrollment that we saw last year. And you see we're 22 students at this point higher than what we were estimating throughout our budget process. If you go to the far right and look at the green number, there's a 65 student add right now from where we were projecting back in the spring. One of the other areas that's had a pretty significant change is 9th grade. You see the green, there's a 15 student increase right now in 9th grade. So overall, we're seeing student growth this summer that has really exceeded what we've seen in the most recent past. Because our enrollment projection models are based on looking at the most recent past and projecting it forward. So we've had a really strong summer for enrollment, which you can see on the screen. One thing to note is every year Randy does show the board our enrollment projections in August. We typically do have families who move out after that point in time and just haven't notified us yet. So at this point, we're not saying the final third Friday count will be up 65. We're just telling you as of Monday, with the students and the families that we know of, we're up 65. Where that is creating the most significant need is Heritage in a kindergarten. I'm just going to ask Dan to talk about that for a minute. Dan came into our admin meeting on a Monday morning and talked through the issue of 5 sections versus 6 in relationship to special ed and the bilingual program and class size at the school and facility space at Heritage. A very deep dive that was included in your packet. that Dan prepared for all of us. So I'm going to ask Dan to give you the highlights of what he's been working on and where his thoughts are about this topic. Dan?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me here tonight to talk about this. There are a lot of things in place that really can certainly support continuing with 5 tracks. Obviously, we have the staff, and we were ready to go. Those numbers, though, would be right at the board max, which would be 22, and there'd be no room for additional move-ins without forced transfers. And, of course, we always try to avoid transfers if we can. So we looked at, what a 6-track might do for us. On the plus side, some of the advantages we have a 6 kindergarten room. 7 years ago when we did our remodel, we had that vision that we would be a 6-track school someday. So there is a 6th room in the kindergarten wing. It also has the kindergarten furniture, casework, some of those things. So a number of things are going to play into supporting that 6th section. The master schedule also is set so that we can certainly add a 6th section. And what I'm talking about with master schedule is, can we schedule in art, music, and world language, Phi-Ed, library? The answer is absolutely. That's a super easy thing to pull off. So that those things are on the upside. Some of the more challenges with adding 6 tracks right now, internally it's a small thing. I have to move some people around in different rooms, not a big deal. Certainly ordering teacher materials would be important. Also, more student-based materials, like kindergarten has got a lot of dramatic play, those kinds of things. So we'd have to do some ordering along the way. I'm not going to read this to you because I'm assuming you're all somewhat familiar with what I put in here for advantages or disadvantages. It certainly could work. The obvious advantage of sticking to 5 sections is there's no fiscal impact on anything, and the disadvantage of adding a person is a fiscal part. But that's Steve's department and your department, and I just wanted to go out and show, again, the advantages and disadvantages of sticking with 5 or going with 6. I'm happy to answer questions about either scenario.
And let me just jump in because Dan referenced the fiscal impact. On the previous document that shows the plus 65, we have not budgeted the revenues for any of those students. So when we use enrollment projections, we use the budget projection column to build our budget for the fall. So if 65 additional students were to actually be here on the 3rd Friday count in September, in the state's revenue limit formula, they get divided by 3, so just say a little over 20, and then our revenues per student are a little over 11. So the revenues that we would bring in if we truly do have additional 65 students are north of $200,000. So the fiscal impact of an additional kindergarten section is going to be probably under 80. So the revenues will be there to support the instructor if we go in that direction, assuming the numbers end up being similar to what you see on the screen, even if they're cut in half. Even if instead of 65 it's 30 additional students bring in an additional $100,000 in revenues, which would support the position. So we feel like from a fiscal impact, this would be an investment that the board could reasonably choose to make, and it would come out of the revenues from the additional students. So, Dan's point is, the fiscal impact on 6 versus 5, we already are budgeting for the 5. But you could certainly look at the additional students coming in from the screen to fund the additional position. Now, if there were other things as a board that you wanted to use as a priority, that might play into this. But as far as being able to have the resources, we will have them, and some of them could be used towards the additional teacher in Heritage.
Do we have someone within the network in the school district that was looking for an opportunity like this? I'm just thinking along the lines of how difficult or not difficult it may be to recruit someone at this stage in summer.
That's a really good question. I wouldn't say we have someone queued up. I would say we have options internally of folks that we could either support getting a license to do this or might have a license that would allow them to do this. and the other reality, because Dan and I talked about this too, is that if there were a particular type of teacher, a license of teacher, that I would say that it's probably the easiest to find at this time of year and have some ample quality people available, would probably be elementary teachers, because that is the greatest supply. But certainly it is August, which is never, you're not going to get the first pick, but I think we still would get some quality applicants.
Great.
Mark?
I don't know how we can support this. I look at the numbers 22 versus
18.
18, and there may be more coming in. And even if they don't, you compare those numbers to the other schools, equity issues. I think from a kid perspective, we don't have a choice.
I agree. Dan, can you touch a little bit more on how it fits with our specials?
Yeah,
With our,
absolutely.
are any of those teachers going to be impacted with like an overload situation? Or
No, none of them should be on an overload. Heritage and Prairie are both built on a 6-track specials model. I believe our Arboretum is built on a 4-track specials model. It's kind of this complicated
Okay,
matrix
yeah,
with
I get
rotations
that,
on a 6-day schedule. I could talk about that for a long time, but the point is, from a FTE perspective, nobody will be overloaded.
Okay.
And then in terms of support with paraeducators, will we need to hire more paraeducators, or we'll just reallocate resources?
I would think I could cover that internally.
Okay.
I would just pull a little time for maybe our 3rd and 4th grade area to kind of target our kinders a little more. I think I could probably work with a para for it.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, if anybody would be making a
Motion to
motion.
approve.
Second?
Any questions on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thanks for bringing it forward, Dan,
Thank you.
and
Thanks for
good
the
luck
support.
finding somebody to
Yes, thank
fit
you.
that,
It'll work out.
fit that bill.
It's
Good.
gonna work out.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Next, we have Todd and Pete here, if you guys want to come forward. Joe,
You can call me Pete.
but your last
Fine.
name is is it?
Porto. Joe Porto and
Porto.
Todd Waunakee.
Todd.
Good to see you all
Good
again.
to see you.
Thanks.
What a refreshing
So-
conversation to listen to the board talk about class size and say, yes, we need a teacher in there.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It's nice to see.
Easier conversation than declining enrollment.
It is, it is. So we're here to kind of talk through a timeline for our superintendent search, and I appreciate the document that you have provided and sent forward to
And
us.
we've got it in a hard copy in case you want to write.
Actually,
right
I
on
think I already have a hard copy, but
The copy we have doesn't have the.
The second one does.
they did give us one just late
We
this
did give a
afternoon.
revised.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, it was the Waunakee planning checklist was added.
Oh, I see it.
I printed both, I didn't know what I was doing.
Took me a minute. Got it. Wow.
Okay to start, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are ready to roll.
Well, first, this is the first time we've had a chance to thank you for selecting us, and we're honored to do this search for you, and we promise we're going to do as great a job as we possibly can. We're excited about it. Tonight, we are going to try to do two things at the same time. We have some decisions that we have to make, some guidelines, some guidance we need from you as we move the search forward. At the same time that we do that, we'll take you through the schedule, because that will be just the most natural way to make these decisions, because certain things have to be done at certain times. So when we walk out of here, you'll have a clearer idea of what this next several months is going to look like. And hopefully, we will have the direction we need on some of the decisions that we make tonight. So I always like, when I make a checklist, to have a couple things I could check off already. It makes me feel like, I jumped into it. So we did our proposal, you accepted, we've got the contract signed, this is our meeting, and off we go. The first thing we want to talk about is the application window. We'd like to actually start tomorrow, assuming everything goes fine tonight and you're comfortable with that. And we're going to run it up through about October 13th. I say the word about because we have the ability to tighten that up or extend it depending on how they're coming in. Usually we hit it pretty much on the mark. We like to pounce and get out there early, even though we don't have a leadership profile yet, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And sometimes boards get a little confused about this. Well, how can you really go out and start recruiting when we don't have the profile nailed down yet? We like to just kind of do the two things in sync. We like to do phase one where we just get the announcement out, we start putting it out there, we start reaching out to people that we think are a good match based on what we know so far. And in the meantime, within the first couple weeks of the search, we'd like to start working on the 3 activities that we have designed to create the profile. So the profile, it will come a little bit after we start posting, but once we do have the profile, then we reestablish the posting, we include the profile, and we have another several weeks with that in place. So that's why we do it that way. We just don't want to lose any really valuable time. The places that we would like to post, and these have some cost to you, but pretty minimal. All of the Wisconsin ones, I believe you're already members of, so those I think would be no charge, and we'll just get on there. We do, our search firm has a website that is very popular. People all over the country are looking at ones we post, so we'll put it on our own website, get a lot of mileage out of that. We've been getting some good action off of LinkedIn. We have an account there, so we'll do that as well. If you'd like, we could extend the search and have it be more of a national search. And when districts tell us they want to do that, we recommend that we post in AASA, that's the Superintendent's organization nationwide. And that's where people in other states are looking for new superintendent opportunities around the country. And then some boards might want to take an extra step and post something in Ed Week, Education Week, which has lost a little bit of its power that it had several years ago. It used to be the go-to national recruiting. It was a weekly physical paper, newspaper. Now it's online, and it's a little more costly than other choices as well. So first decision coming up. Todd's going to pass out now. Based on what we've researched about the district and what we know about you guys already, we've created an initial job posting that Todd's going to pass around. I'll give you a couple minutes to look through it. If you think we did okay, this is what we'd like to use for the initial postings on our website and these Wisconsin sites. And again, once the profile is created, we will literally put a link on this Waunakee announcement, and it would be the candidate would just press a button and then see the leadership profile. you are all very easy, your district and community are very easy to write about. We could have had this be a lot longer.
I see a typo.
Oh, that's a typo, yeah. Thank you.
I see it.
That's why we do this. So as you're wrapping that up, our 3 questions regarding this part of the search are this. Are you comfortable with the time frame of August 3rd through October 13th for the recruitment and application window? Number 2, are you okay with this as an initial announcement? And number 3, do you want us to be aggressive nationally or somewhere in between, or keep it local?
What did I know you presented this to us when we initially met, about what other school districts did that you've worked with
Yeah.
in terms of that national versus regional.
We'll stick to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
In Green Bay, they wanted an aggressive national search. And so we used AASA and we used the Ed Week, and we used the National Organizations for African American Administrators and the National Organization for Latino Administrators. They also had a strong desire for a very diverse group to be brought forward. So they kind of took the whole package. McGuanago, a little bit more like you guys, a suburb, they took a medium route. They had a feeling that they were going to be attractive to Wisconsin people, and they kind of wanted that. But they didn't want to rule out any good national candidates. So we did include an AASA posting, and we actually brought them a couple of national candidates. But it wasn't quite that full-blown deal that we did with Green Bay.
Anybody who's looking for a superintendent job is gonna do the research on the internet, and whether you put it in ASA or just do it here in the state, they're gonna find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of when the applicant date runs through, are you going to have any issues hitting the October 16th date when you're presenting the slate of candidates? Like, you're giving yourselves a weekend.
We like to live on the edge. We don't want you to, we make it tight like that, Dawn, because we like to get that profile out to the candidates as quickly as we can. So we'll be working on the data, all along, but then we can easily pull it together that weekend. That's the way we designed it. Thank you for thinking about us, though. I like that.
And the screening is happening all along the way. So we're screening the applicants and having conversations with them, so we'll be able to present.
Okay.
So is the timeline, let's start there. Is everyone comfortable with that timeline?
I have no problem.
That looks good.
Okay, so that's good. Would you like us to work with you, and it would be, let's say about $500. Might be about $500 to post in AASA, just so we have a net out to a national search, or would you rather us not do that?
I'm more for just a local search, in my opinion. Like you said, I think or like maybe McGuanago said, I think it's a pretty sought after district potentially, and I'd like the feel of more of a local, someone that knows maybe what we have here, as opposed to looking elsewhere.
Polar opposite. I like the national search because I think that the best candidates may not be from Wisconsin.
Do you have a sense of, in your experience, when you bring in a national candidate, is the tendency that they stay as long as somebody from within the state? Or might they move more quickly to
That's
another
a great
position?
question. I don't have the data on that.
You don't have a gut
No,
feeling
not-
that?
My gut feeling is that they actually stay longer
Oh,
because
okay.
they've uprooted
Yeah,
themselves
they've
to come
invested
here.
in moving.
And usually they do a great deal of research before they uproot themselves and or their families.
Yeah.
And so they're not usually eager to move. We placed a superintendent in Munster, Indiana, who came all the way from Idaho. And you wouldn't have thought that would be a place, and he was just the perfect match for them. And he brought his whole family, he had young kids and everything. I can say that we are getting good response when we do nationally. In other words, I think Waunakee even was surprised that we had so many national people interested. They ended up going with a Wisconsin person who was, I think, in the district right next door to them. So kind of turned out, Ted, the way you were talking, but I think they appreciated having to be able to look and compare candidates with a little bit wider net.
To target the more diverse slate of candidates, what's the cost on top of the AASA?
If you wanted the AASA and the two organizations, it would be about $1,000.
The advantage of doing that is that you show your constituents that you did cast a large net, right? You did your due diligence and put it out there. And you don't have to then get into like, why didn't you do a national search? You know, so, no, we did. We went out and we put it all across the country. You might end up with someone right next door, but you can answer that question to those who may raise it.
Like you mentioned, those that are really looking for something, even if you didn't do it nationally, do they have a tendency to find you necessarily or not?
Only if they know BWP.
Okay.
If they're a national candidate and they've worked with us, and they know to look at the BWP site, because it'll be up there for anyone in the world to see. But not necessarily if you don't do at least AASA. I'd be worried that you might miss some good people.
Mark?
I like the idea of a wider net, just to a greater diversity of candidates. I have a little trepidation given the Madison School District bringing people in from out of state and leaving within
Yeah.
years, and so
Yeah.
that's a thing that I'm a little unsettled with that
Sure.
possibility. But I do like the idea. I mean, we have a bigger net, more candidates to choose from. We still get to select the candidates we want to meet with, and maybe the one comes from that.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to keep the net wider, and you don't know who is going to be looking at them.
Judy, how about you, Katie?
I think I'm looking for a wider, I think it speaks to our constituents that we've looked far and wide. It wasn't just local. So we still have the option to choose the best candidate.
Right.
So I think I'd lean that way.
And those are questions you can ask during the interview. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? You know,
Yeah.
you can get a sense of why are they moving here? Are they excited about the district, excited about the winters? You know,
People from Wisconsin might leave sooner than you want to. It's more on the candidate and where he or she is in their career. And whether they view, the ideal is to find someone who views this as their end game,
Yeah,
their end,
destination.
their and I think this is a destination district. So you're going to want to ask that in your different rounds of the interviews to get a feel for that, if they feel that way. And you'll be able to tell. You can tell when it's people are kind of viewing it as a stepping stone versus a destination.
I find myself leaning more towards Ted's viewpoints on this. And I think that's mainly more because I feel like through the interview process, I find value in somebody that's, from our area, familiar with the state of Wisconsin and things like that. But I certainly, I mean, that's all part, that, like you mentioned, will be part of the interview process.
So Joan, it seems like we don't have a total agreement, but the majority does appear to want to expand the search a little bit. So we would do that through an ad in AASA and the two administrative groups that we mentioned. Is that okay?
I am in favor of that.
With the idea that it's around $1,000?
Yes, if it's any more than that, I would let you know. Okay? Great.
I agree.
All right. Are you taking notes on the
I
decisions?
got
Good.
it, yep.
Okay, we're zipping along. I've alluded already to the leadership profile now several times, so let me emphasize again that this is a core part of our process. We don't like to just put out an announcement and cross our fingers and hope the right people apply. We want to create a profile of exactly who we're looking for, based on your community, your district, your needs. So, and these are not boilerplate. We've been challenged sometimes by boards, well, these leadership profile, doesn't everyone want a good communicator? Doesn't everybody want a hands-on, And there are some things, quite honestly, that do come up. But, I don't know, I'd love to, someday when I do one of these, I'll bring some ones we've had in the past. They can be and should end up being very specific to the district. If I could use, again, Waunakee, fellow Wisconsin district, they were the first district that we ever worked with that their number one characteristic that they were looking for turned out to be a unifier. Because they had an election, it was contentious, they had a divided board, they'd been 5-4 on a bunch of issues, and that meant a lot when we were out recruiting and the candidates saw that. So we want to be able to develop a profile like that for you. And we go about it 3 ways. There's 3 steps. One is a survey that people will do online. They'll be able to access it through your website if we have the cooperation of your tech department. It's there for teachers, board members, parents, and non-parents. So we don't restrict the access to that. And we'll run it for about 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. And we would need a little bit of help from the district putting out the publicity to, hey, do this survey. It's an important first step to help us find who we're looking for. We use a pretty standard survey that we've developed over the years. It's basically, it's very short. A person could go up and do it in less than 5 minutes, so it's very user-friendly. And there's more than 3 questions, but there is 3 main things that we're asking for. We want to know, what are the strengths, the current strengths of your district? Because this is going to help us do recruitment. And you're going to want somebody who can build off of your strengths, right? Second, obviously, what are some growth areas? What are some areas that you see are going to land on your new superintendent's desk pretty early on? And you're going to want to make sure that your new superintendent has skills in those areas. Then the third thing we ask is a leader, what are the characteristics and qualities that are most important to you? What, is it curriculum that you want as your number one? Is it business and finance? Is that going to be more important? Does person with this background or that background? So we delve into those 3 areas on the survey. Now, we're not going to send anything out in your name that you haven't had a chance to see. So what we'd like to do, Joan, is send you a copy of that, and in whatever your communication vehicle is, you can let your colleagues take a look. I don't necessarily recommend it, but we have customized it for districts as well. If there's something that doesn't look right to you, or an important area to you that you think we left out, what's nice is we have our own tech person who's got this all, in her world, and she can make any changes that you would want. So I thought maybe the easiest thing, Joan, would be to get it out to you.
Sure.
You get it out.
Sure.
Let everybody take a look. If it's okay, great, we'll go with it. If you want to make any changes, we'll take a look at whatever feedback that you have for us.
Is it ready, is it currently ready that you could send it soon?
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yep.
Okay, because we have a board meeting a week from Monday,
Okay.
and that's always a good time when we're all together.
Okay.
And we could schedule maybe, a few minutes during that meeting to at
Okay.
least address any concerns.
Sure.
Secondly,
Mhm.
do you send it to everybody in the community or just like families of school children?
Everyone,
In the
if
community.
you can use your current communication vehicles
Yes.
to invite the entire community, school community. If you're like most districts, you have over 70% of your people don't have kids in your schools.
Exactly,
And that's
yeah.
a lot of people that you represent who don't have kids, so you want
Okay.
their viewpoints too.
Yes.
Is
Okay.
the anonymous, or is the survey filled out anonymously, or is?
It's
each-
totally anonymous, and our person is a third party. She's not a representative actually of our own firm. She's not an employee. So we can absolutely guarantee total anonymity. We have no way of going back and
But
figuring
is
out.
there a verification step to make sure that the person filling out the survey is from the school district?
I don't believe so. We have not had any problem with that, where all of a sudden we saw people with an issue, try to affect the survey results. We've had that come up as a concern in a couple places, but it's never panned out.
Generally, you're struggling to get a good
Right.
representation within the district.
It's
is
usually the
what it is,
opposite
yeah.
problem, but I do understand where you're.
The genesis is this, we've had people come to speak at school board meetings
And it
that
turns out-
aren't from our school
Yeah.
district.
Yep,
so,
yep,
Yeah.
Best thing to do is if this helps with getting a really good teacher and employee response, if that can be part of like one of the first institute days, give everybody 10 minutes to do the survey, you could get probably close to 100% of your faculty. And then if you've got back to school nights and, open school, things like that, that's a good way to hit up parents. The more you publicize, the better. Every district we've ever worked with has been disappointed in the survey total, because you always think, why aren't people responding? We've made it so easy. But we know a good response when we see it, and we'll tell you if it's valid. You can count on these results. There were enough people that filled it out.
Okay.
Even though it's anonymous, there must be a category of you're a member of the community,
Yes.
your kids, you're a teacher.
Yes. By the way, high school students are invited to participate as
good.
well.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody, they're able to say if they're an employee, if they've had kids in the district, they currently have kids.
You can desegregate
It's nice,
the
you can
data
desegregate, deaggregate it all. It's a really good tool, and we are proposing a September 5th through September 22nd window for that. We have found that keeping it open longer does not equal more responses. In fact, if anything, if you tighten it up a little, people take it more seriously. So we specifically chose that amount of days because that's our sweet spot we have
Okay.
found over the years. The results get all presented in a beautiful report that's easy to take a look at, and as soon as we get the results, we share them with you, and they're also part of what we're going to talk about later, which is when we present the entire profile to you. So that's the survey. That's prong one of how we get the information to create the leadership profile. Prong two is a day that Todd and I, and we'll probably bring 2 colleagues from BWP to come with us. And we spend an entire day in your district chatting with focus groups. Rebecca will need probably your help in putting this day together. The superintendent and his or her administrative assistants are vital to us because we don't know your groups or how to schedule them or who to reach out to. So it will need some support from your administration. What we like to do is meet, though, with focus groups of key stakeholders. So we're going to want to have a meeting of your superintendent's cabinet, for instance. A meeting, we usually separate because principals have different issues sometimes than central office, so we'll meet with the principals, we'll meet with your cabinet. We'll have several meetings with your teachers using your advice as to what would be some key locations, often at the high school and maybe the middle school, something along those lines, and people can come. If you have PTA or PTO leadership, it's nice to meet with the presidents of the different schools, PTOs, PTAs. If you have community leaders that you have worked with regularly, Chamber of Commerce persons, Rotary, those kinds of things, that can be a group. So we would meet with groups, and they can be, we're able to handle pretty much any size. We've done this enough. So sometimes it's just 5 people. A support staff group is another one that's always really nice to get. Or we can meet with a larger group. For parents, we like to set up a meeting after dinner hours. So it's usually 6:30. Invite parents and non-parent community members, anyone who wants to come out. And this is up to you. And again, when I'm done explaining this, we'll hear your viewpoints. We learned through the pandemic, when we had to do this all virtually, we learned through that experience that we actually got greater participation levels when we offered virtual experiences. When you ask parents to come after dinner to a gym, we would view 10 participants as a positive result. When we open it up and have virtual parent meeting through Zoom, all of a sudden we've got 25, 30 people. And we also we were able to offer a teacher virtual too. Some teachers like to, hey, I'm already at school, I'm here already. If they came at 3:45, I'll stay and I'd like to get over it. Others are scooting to pick up their kids at childcare. And hey, if it could be virtual at 6:30, I'd participate. So in theory, Joan, we could go all virtual, we could go all in person, or we could do a nice mix. I think you can tell from the way I described that we like the mix.
Yeah.
We'd like to have the on-site opportunities, but at least for the teachers and the parents and non-parents, we'd like to offer those virtually if we could. What are your thoughts? You know your communities way better than us. Our only goal is to talk to as many people as we can in our day that we're here. By the way, we ask the same 3 questions that are focused on in the survey. That's what we ask the group. Strengths, challenges, characteristics.
So
We're also very good at not letting people hijack those meetings.
Yeah.
We're very good at shutting down, we want a superintendent who's not going to close, Ivy Hill School, that kind of stuff when it comes up. This is all about who your next superintendent is, and we keep it laser focused on that.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding recommendations for parents and teachers, and parents and teachers are recommending the Zoom option?
Both.
Oh, both, okay.
So I'd like
Yeah.
to see the teachers still have a couple of sites. We'll send our team to a couple of schools. Maybe if there's 4 of us, we could have teachers in 4 schools right after school. But as I said, there are some teachers that can't make that. They are trying to get to.
Sure.
So I like
Zoom option
both.
and then in-person options.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But that Zoom could include community then? Teachers could come into the Zoom, or would you keep it separate?
I think we like to keep it separate because we're looking at different viewpoints.
And different
so,
questions?
We will.
Same questions.
Yeah. We will, well, we'll be on site conducting the parents and teacher on site. We will have one of our colleagues facilitating a teacher Zoom after dinner hours and a parent/community Zoom after dinner hours. This is all if you like this. We have been doing it this way for the last couple of searches and gotten just really good results with it.
Do you record what is said? Do you?
Great question, I left that out.
Yeah.
We write down every comment.
You write it down?
We
You don't
write it down.
record it?
Yeah. We're not-
We
there's no-
don't record it, but we take really, really copious notes because we want to make sure everybody feels that they were heard. And when we present our leadership profile as to the top 8 characteristics that you're looking for, we don't just add up the comments and do it like a vote, but I can show you the work we do behind the scenes. We look at every single comment. We look for frequency of a certain concept coming up. And those concepts that come up with high frequency based on the notes we took and then comparing them to what was said on the survey gives us a really strong view that what we're presenting to you is quite valid. It's actually both quantitative and qualitative research. Longer answer than you probably want,
No,
but
it seems kind of a massive amount of data, but
it's a lot.
good.
It's good.
It's a lot. But we have, we've learned how to do it while it's fresh, and we know how to do the consolidation and consensus of what we're
So
seeing.
the length of your focus groups is dependent upon the number of people there because almost everybody shares each of their,
We usually tell them,
45,
we
yeah.
usually would work with Rebecca, who's going to make the schedule for us, and we probably put 45 minutes tops.
Yeah,
Sometimes those ones with a bigger groups takes a little longer, the
Yeah.
teacher ones after school, if a lot of faculty come. We don't, by the way, we might schedule 45, but if there's still a bunch of people who want to speak and we don't have anybody right after us, we just
Yeah.
will stay.
It's surprising how many people attend, but how few speak.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So you have to work at getting them to respond to questions. Some just want to come and observe and listen and see what's being said.
Great
So-
point.
So when a
Sometimes
couple
we-
of districts we've been in, we've had to like solicit, come, and then maybe put an idea out to get it going. But
Yeah.
most of the time, I bet there's probably 50% of those who attend actually
Sometimes there's people
won't do the speaking.
not sinister, they're just their personality, they take over a meeting. And
Yeah.
so we have to say things like, well, we're pretty clear on what you
Yeah.
like. But I haven't heard from a bunch of the others, so we work really hard to make sure that the data we get is well representative.
And you can see on the next section was board interviews, and so we treat the board differently. We have one-on-one interviews with the board, Zoom or phone call, and that's done intentionally because we've been in districts where board members have attended some of the public sessions. It kind of silences the group
Oh,
because
so you don't
they
want it.
see a board member
Yeah.
there and they don't maybe feel as comfortable in sharing their thoughts.
We
And
would
so-
ask that you don't attend.
So that's why we have a separate section just for the board members.
Thanks, Todd. And that's the third prong, the one-on-one board interviews. Most board members have been fine setting those up as a phone call. Or if you don't prefer, we can do it one-on-one. Those 3 prongs where we're gathering all the input and data We would like to do that September 18th through the 27th. We wanted to let you get your school year off and running. We didn't want teachers and principals, worrying about this the first week of school. But we also didn't want too much school to go by and all of a sudden we don't get our leadership profile till it's too late for the recruiting. So again, we try to hit the sweet spot here, the 18th through the 22nd. And we would just pick one day that week for the on-site. And then, Rebecca, another thing that is helpful is then if you could get board members when they would like us to call them. And for you guys, it could be any day and time that week. We try to be totally flexible because we know you're juggling so many things. So Rebecca would put out some sort of notice and you just give us the day and time and one of the two of us will call you. Is there a day that week that would kind of work? Because the more specific dates we get out of this discussion tonight, the better off we'll all be. So I don't know what you've got going on as far as other meetings or activities that week.
I can tell you the state superintendent conference happens that week, so I don't know if the superintendent would go to that. I don't know if any of the cabinet attends that as well, and I guess it's probably not. Okay.
I don't know if midweek is a good time. I know we've had, as a board, we've had listening sessions, and we try and have them on different days, and it's hard to know when you're gonna get the most people.
But this is just for us, right, that you were looking?
This is for the day in the district as well.
Okay.
And that we wanted to zero in on just one day. For you guys, it could be any time that week.
So
If there isn't any conflict, we just as soon try to do like a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
yep. Look for Packer games, those kind of things.
try to-
That's what you look for, right?
Yeah.
As brewers, so it's pretty open.
Brian, you have a sense of the district.
I would probably say that, in terms of like community, parent, family participation, probably a Wednesday is going to be your best opportunity. In the middle of the work week, certainly the employees, we can balance to get.
Let's
their
tentatively say Wednesday, the 20th. And upon reflection, if you, Brian, if you or Rebecca see anything that would change that.
Yeah, but Rebecca and I can work together on kind of building a schedule for you guys.
Great.
So perhaps we can just confirm the groups to make certain we know what we're tracking
Yeah.
on, right? So we have the administrators, we have the superintendent cabinet, right? That's different than.
So you're having building administrators.
We would have
right?
principals in one meeting and district
Yep.
Okay.
officials in the other.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tom.
And teachers just determine how, that can just be, again, open to all teachers. We've done that, and you end up getting a handful of teachers who show. And we can set up where it's elementary, middle, or high school. Or in the past, in the other districts, we've had 2 sessions in person, and we've had 2 virtual.
I think if we split that elementary and secondary, might
Okay.
make sense because we have 2 different daily schedules.
Okay.
Gotcha.
That would allow our both folks to have a right away after school option at those different times might work well. And then obviously they get.
Would it need to be 3? Is middle school different or?
So our 5-12 are similar schedules, our K4 is
Oh,
similar
okay.
schedules.
Okay, 4, 5, 12. Okay. Thank you. That's real helpful. Go ahead.
So we do 2 after school in person is what I.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
would-
And then we have 1 or 2 virtual options for that? Doesn't matter.
Are you supportive of a virtual option
yeah,
for
yeah,
teachers?
definitely.
Probably just one.
Just, you wouldn't have to have elementary that.
No, I would think
you
we
could
could
do
do that
those
one
all
with just
together.
one time.
For everybody, K-12, we can have one
K-12
virtual.
all
Okay.
together.
Would it make sense to have the elementary at the Heritage for kind of a central?
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe the high
Well,
school.
we can kind of look at the
Yeah.
availability too.
Yeah.
Brian and I'll hash
Yeah.
that out.
Perfect. What else?
Excellent. So Union leadership, there was a district who was very adamant on us meeting with the union leadership. Again, it depends on the nature of the relationship between the board and the union leadership in the district. Obviously, unions take on a little bit of a different flavor in all districts, so that's up to you if you want. The union members will be a part of the teachers' meetings.
I would think they're a part of it.
I think having them be able to come as a group would be appropriate.
Separate.
Usually, if a district does this, it's the officers
Yeah.
of the association, and then, of course, any union members would come to the teacher ones. But a separate meeting for the union officers is sometimes an important gesture.
I think so.
Okay.
So that's a yes, okay.
Yes.
Support staff,
Yes.
alrighty. These will all be in person, so we don't necessarily, we haven't done virtual for those. Those are
No.
all in person. just
So,
we're clear.
can we have two of them? Because again, of our different schedule,
Sure.
Sure, we can do the K4 and then 512.
so
Yeah.
we can
That
do
works.
I think
after
that's
school.
a great point, John. We don't want any faculty members thinking that they didn't have the same access
Right.
as others.
So parent leaders, again, if discussion amongst the board, we can pull in PTA, PTO representatives, or they can be a part of the parent sessions. So I'm trying to think, I think the districts that we've been a part of, we did, in one of the districts, meet with PTO leadership.
In that district, each school had their own PTO, and we just
President,
met with the
second.
president of all of them, but every district's structured differently. How does yours work?
I think it makes sense to do that, to meet with the
PTA presidents?
Yeah, we have, family teacher organizations, then we have parent advisory at the high school level, and there's not leadership there, but there's a group that meets every month with the principal. So I don't know how that would work, but perhaps it could be an invite to the parent
Maybe,
advisory. And I think
Invite
middle
all
school
the
might do it.
PTA presidents, and then maybe that leadership
Yeah.
group. and
I
whoever
think the middle
wants to
school
come.
does an advisory group too, I'm not sure. Okay. I think that would make sense, it would be a good thing to do.
So we would just need confirmation that that does exist, the advisory at the middle. Rebecca, we'll work with you on that, yeah, okay. Community leaders, we've done that where we've met with, for example, we invited the chief of police, the mayor, could be the president of Rotary or Lions. They,
Not all districts do this one.
not all, but.
The bigger districts tend to want to do this. Smaller suburban districts, some do, some don't.
Again, nothing,
Totally your call.
nothing prevents them from coming to the community open forum, so you can come there as a community member as well.
Do we have a large leadership somewhere else that's unified, or they just be community? I don't know.
It'd be the board, but I don't think the board needs its own.
No, I don't
thing.
either,
Yeah.
no. I don't think Rotary needs its own either.
Right.
They would be part of that, of
Of the
those community
community,
leaders.
yeah.
So
We
they
could
would-
just make sure that they know they're welcome to the community
Yeah.
one, but maybe, I'm sounding like they might not need their own separate.
So the community leaders and community open forum would be different?
Those would be the same.
Same,
Yeah.
yeah, I would think that would be the same.
The only way we'd separate them out is if you wanted those leaders to have their own special meeting.
I don't think we,
I don't think so either.
Okay. This has been just extremely helpful.
Absolutely.
I think we have everything we need, and we'll work with you, Rebecca, on fine tuning that. And
Student groups, do we want student
Oh,
groups?
yeah.
That was the
Oh,
one other
yeah.
one, middle high school.
yeah,
You
student
want-
group.
Probably, you must have some student government, student council.
Normally, school will put,
council.
the
Yeah.
student leaders.
Principal advisory, sometimes principals have student advisory type things, so,
You want representation from different,
From
The
the
high
different
school
groups.
works better than,
Maybe,
we wouldn't shut out anybody.
yeah.
good.
Have a height requirement.
Maybe Brian can help us get a good student representation of our population there.
Tell them we'll do that one during school hours, so
There'll be more.
there'll be more.
They actually have a advisory hour.
Oh, what a nice.
And maybe they could pull them,
Wonderful, that
if they
would,
know in advance, they could
that's
pull
exactly
them.
the kind of thing should be happening.
I don't think it's on Wednesdays, though.
The high school would have, it's not advisory, that's the open scheduled time, so that it could be just a group that gets established, so it would work.
When you do the community, you'll do one in person, and then
One virtual, one
and a
in person.
virtual. Okay.
So for teachers, we'll do 2 on-site,
In-person and
1
one
virtual. For support staff, we'll do 2 on-site, and then invite them to the teacher virtual one, unless you think they need their own. We did that once and just
I
didn't
think that
get
works.
any.
That works.
Yeah. Okay, and then again, the parents, 1 on-site, probably at the high school, somewhere central. I don't know if your high school is central in geography as well as.
Yeah.
It's accessible.
Could be up
It's
to you.
pretty central.
So that's how we get the data. The last, we talked about the interviews, and then we closed the survey on September 22nd. Now, then the job goes to us, and we put this thing together, and what we'll put together is called a leadership profile report. And what we like to do is come and formally present to you the report in person. We like for you to not have to do an extra meeting because we are very respectful of your time. So we like to piggyback onto a meeting you've already got scheduled. But I don't know, I think you guys meet normally, is it the first?
Second.
Second.
The October 9th.
We're kind of off. I didn't know if maybe you had a committee of the whole or, some other thing. If not, I'm afraid we'd have to ask you to do a special meeting.
To get it
The
started.
leadership profile is a positive meeting. It never takes more than 45 minutes to an hour.
How long would you need to compile the information?
We can get it
Survey closes.
as soon as that survey closes, we'll
22nd.
start putting it together.
Yep,
So the last week?
the 20th.
So the,
We could get it done on the last week of September, because again, we're eager to have you get the profile so that we can start attaching it to our recruitment.
sure. So I'm wondering if it would make sense if we had a special meeting on the October 2nd? Or if that's too late?
We have an annual meeting on the 16th, so we'd be meeting all those Mondays.
yeah.
So if we went the last week of
Last week of
September,
September workable for you guys? Or
Yes.
that's too fast?
No, we can do it.
So Monday would probably be too soon.
but towards the end of the week?
Maybe give us a little
What about
past
the-
Monday, but I think we could make
What
them.
about the 27th?
The 27th would work.
Or 28th is Thursday too, so.
I
Can you do that?
can do that week,
Um,
but that's fine.
28th, the Lions are at Packers. I think I have a ticket to that game.
Okay.
Oh, you don't want to do that.
The 27th?
But I can sell those if I need to.
Well, if we didn't take Mondays, we could.
You guys have met 3 Mondays before,
Yeah,
if you want.
Everybody seems to save Mondays, don't they?
Yeah.
So Monday the 2nd,
Are you talking October or the 20th?
October the 2nd.
Yeah, because
Yep.
there's no way I think I could get that done.
Yep, that's good. Okay.
Actually, that'll be 4 Mondays in a row,
What's the
That's okay.
23rd?
because we've got the annual meeting, we've got the regular board meeting, we will have this, and then the special board meeting to approve the budget is the 4th Monday in October.
Oh,
There's a lot of
That's
opportunities to
exciting.
meet in October, so there'll be 4 in a row then, just so you know.
Well, does it make sense to attach, that's, the 25th is too soon?
too late.
I mean, too soon for these guys.
Yeah, but there's another step in there, a little bit further down, that would make sense to attach to one of those other meetings.
yes. Yeah.
So the
I
9th.
hate to say this to you guys, but I think you guys stick with the 2nd and
Yep.
just,
Suck it up.
thank you, Judy.
We promise it will be a very pleasant meeting.
Judy's going to bring brownies that night, so
That'd be
no
great.
worries.
Okay.
Brownies and
All right,
rocks.
so we'll say October 2nd, and we thank you. And again, we're going to try so hard to be respectful of your time. As soon as we present that profile, we adjust all of our recruitment papers and postings, and we include it. And that happens just the second we're done with that. Applications will close then on October 6th. We're moving right along. And what Todd and I then do is we spend about 2 weeks going over all of the applications. We look at each and every one. People apply using a product called Frontline, which a lot of districts use. And they apply, it's all electronic. They submit all of their papers, references, credentials, everything. So Todd and I will have everything we need. We screen, and no exaggeration, we literally take your leadership profile that's unique to you, and we create our own rubric, and we rate the candidates along the 8 to 10 or whatever characteristics that are on your profile. And so we do the paper screening that way, and there's no magic number. It depends on how many overall we get, but we usually bring in 12 to 14 people for an initial screening interview with us. And this is usually now via Zoom for us, so that we're not spending your money flying people all over the country if it turns out that they're not a viable candidate. We will screen those 12 then with an interview format that we create, guess what? Based on the 8 to 10 characteristics. And then we will evaluate using a rubric on those folks we screened, and we will narrow it down to a slate that we will then bring to you. So that's our process. First we do a screening of, it's not really a paper, it used to be called a paper screening in my old dinosaur days, but we'll do a screening of applications, then we'll do an initial interview, then we'll be prepared for presentation of the slate to you guys. There is no magic number. 6 turns out to be a number that ends up happening quite often, but there's no forcing of a certain number, and you can figure out why. If we're screening and there's not much difference between the 5th, 6th, and 7th candidate, why would we want to arbitrarily chop off a good candidate just to make it 6? We'll bring you 7 in that case. Another thing that happens is sometimes you get this great slate and there's a cluster of like 5 and then a big drop before you get to 6. Well, why do we want to waste your time again just to get to 6? So we like to tell boards it's going to be 4 to 7. We've never come with less than 4, and I've never brought more than 7. So that's just historical from our point of view. And
So that we would tack on the October 16th meeting.
That would work.
This is a big meeting for us because we do 2 things. We present to you the candidates by telling you a little bit about each of the candidates. We'll have a chart that will summarize the strengths and reasons why they're on there. We do it that way so that we don't appear to favor any one candidate or another when we're presenting to you. So we have created a chart that highlights maybe 3 of their biggest accomplishments from what we found out, 3 things that stood out from their interviews. We set it up that way so you're getting a similar amount of information about them all. On the day that we present the slate, we'll also bring with you not their entire file, but the key aspect, which is the application, our application. which includes all the crucial things you'd want to know about their education, their experience, and also we ask essay questions that are very important, how they answer those. So you'll have that that we'll give you at that point. Then we will give you a Dropbox, access to a Dropbox that will allow you to go in and get even more information about each of the candidates when you're ready to start evaluating yourself, the 6 or 7 people that we bring you. There is so much data that we don't want to bring that much in paper, that you've got people's private things, floating around. So we try to bring you the minimum. Again, it'll be a chart summary of what we were impressed with. It'll be their application, and then you'll have access to everything they submitted. So that would be everything, their certifications and so on. And we would send Joan the information on how to log into that, and then you guys can have at it. Now, this meeting is a little longer. I've never done this one in less than 90 minutes. Because in addition to presenting the candidates, we take you through the process of reaching an agreement on how you're going to develop questions for your interviews. We will bring sample questions. We will show you how other districts tied the leadership profile into questions that the board asks. We like to leave that meeting not with the questions written, but for instance, Joan would say, all right, Mark, you're going to write a question connected to the finance part of the leadership profile. Katie, would you do the curriculum question that came from the profile? We want somebody who's got good communication skills came up. Ted, would you write the communicate? And then they'd send it to you and you'd put together. So we'll take you through how many questions you should have, how long to spend on the interview. We take you through a whole training.
And we'll have sample questions too,
Yeah.
tied to the leadership profile as well.
So
Do we need to schedule that then?
Well, because that meeting is longer, boards have the option. Some boards would rather just add it to the end of their regular meeting, and even though you're all tired, you don't have to do an extra meeting, and everyone sucks it up and off we go. I don't know how long your meetings usually are. Other boards say, I want to be fresh, I want to be crisp, I want to be focused, and I don't want to tie this into another meeting.
So our
The
regular
16th
meeting
is
is October 9th, so that's too soon for this, according to your timeline.
The 16th is our
The
annual
16th
meeting.
is our annual meeting, and that starts at 7.
That's not very long.
No,
That's a half-hour meeting usually.
Yeah.
But if we did a 5 o'clock, I mean, you could do one of two things. You could do it after, or you could do a 5 o'clock, but you guys would have to stay to 90 minutes.
We do
Yeah.
like 5:30.
Well, 5:30 would run us right up to 7, and our annual meeting has to start at 7.
yeah. And
So
I would
I'd
hate to
want a
make
little
them
bur in there.
stay.
You don't want to feel rushed to have the conversation around the candidates.
I don't want
So
to
if we had
feel
something on the
rushed.
back end, I'd be a little nervous that we would feel hurt.
I'd rather pick a day that's just for this.
I would feel more comfortable with a clean day just for this.
I'm okay with the annual
And-
one, just because that's never long. I mean, that's a short meeting.
Go after?
Yeah.
I'd rather go after than before where
Right.
we're confined.
I mean-
Personally, we'd rather go after so there isn't that time
Yeah,
pressure.
okay.
We don't mind
Would
staying.
you think the annual meeting would be?
Well, I'm hearing a request to shorten up the annual meeting.
Steve's all over this.
We can scale back that presentation.
It has not been very long.
I mean, it hasn't gone over an hour.
I was going to say, we probably could safely say 18:15, but is that too late for you guys?
No, it's
No.
not late for us. It's,
Not
you just
at all.
want to be fresh and be able to give your best
agree with
thinking
that.
around this.
Okay. After the annual meeting, or is everybody okay with that? And we'll try to scale the annual meeting
What's the
down.
date?
Steve?
Okay.
It's Monday the 16th.
Monday the 16th?
Monday, the 16th.
And we would probably come on at what time?
8-ish.
About 8?
Maybe 7:45 if we really get that
Okay,
annual meeting.
we're game.
And, yep, and that would be a closed session, so it would be posted as a closed session.
Okay,
No Monday night Bears game? Or Bears, sorry.
Oh, Joe.
Sorry, I'm
just
from
the-
Illinois,
yep,
sorry.
that was-
Packers game.
No, not on the 16th. No.
Okay.
okay.
Yes, that would be a closed session at 8-ish. We will be here early, and we'll just be ready to go when you're done. So the pressure's on you, Steve, to get that wrapped up.
No problem.
That's good. And while we're talking dates and times, let's just go back up to the October 2nd, that presentation of leadership profile. What time would that meeting be? Is that at 5:30? We didn't discuss time, we just
You
said.
tell us.
We could do a 5:30 or
5,
or 6.
Can Jack get here by then?
5:30 would be.
usually
5:30
Jack is good at 5:30 and Dawn 5:30.
5:30, October
5:30.
2nd is the leadership profile.
Yeah.
Monday, October 16th at 8 PM will be the presentation and training.
And is the leadership profile an open meeting?
Yes,
That's an open session.
absolutely.
Okay,
At this point, the focus shifts to you folks. We recommend that you do 2 rounds of interview. That you do first round with I'm just going to use the number 6, that you set up and meet all 6 people. We would suggest that the very following week, because if you wait too long, we have found some boards have had to wait long because not everyone could make it, but you lose something when you don't have a momentum. So in a perfect world, you'd interview 6 people or so one week. You'd narrow that down in a perfect world to 2 finalists, and then you'd do a second interview with the 2 finalists.
So for terminology, your initial interview with that 6 or 7 would be considered a screening interview of that pool. And then when you're down to 2 or 3, that would be your final.
Again, no magic numbers. If there's 3 fabulous people and you want to bring them all back, then you have 3 finalists. I don't recommend this, but we had 2 districts where one candidate just for the board so rose above the others that they didn't even want to bring anyone back. They brought her back for a second interview to affirm their initial feeling. But normally, a board gets it down to 2 finalists, and that usually seems to be what they focus on. The first round, when you're interviewing all 6, that interview should be about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. That's actually a little longer than just a screening interview. It gives you a chance to delve into the leadership profile points. It also works out nicely. Usually every board member can ask at least one question. We will tell you during the training, but we'll probably send you in there with 12 to 15 questions just in case you need them, that kind of thing. But it's about an hour and 15 minutes. Usually that first screening interview, that first round, is somewhere in the district. It's very appropriate to meet in a nice conference room. Some boards find conferences rooms kind of cold, and so they'd like to meet in a library or some really nice space. So it's up to you, but usually that's within district. The second meeting, we highly recommend that you switch things up. That many districts find the second meeting at a restaurant over dinner to be a really nice change, not only change of pace, but you put the candidates in a more social situation, and you often get to see them as the people that they are, not just the educator that they are. Now, of course, you're still going to have follow-up questions from the first round that you're going to want to get to during the dinner. But it's just a more relaxing, free-flowing thing. And usually boards will pick a restaurant in town that might have a room in the back, somewhere where you could have some privacy. And you run it that way. So that's that's how we recommend that the first 2 rounds go. Todd, what did I leave out?
So when you get down to those 2 or 3 finalists, some boards decide to have the candidate in the district for a portion of the day.
Yeah.
And potentially walk through the districts, meet some individuals, and then have dinner on the back end. So then you'd be talking 2 days that you if you're going to have dinner type thing.
So is that where you have the optional step?
Yes.
Yep.
This,
Oh, yep.
the optional step can be either a day in the district tacked on to the meeting with the board, or it could be a day in a district at a different, its own time, or some districts who wanted to have some community input at this stage, but don't want the big day in the district dog and pony show as it can turn into, have opted for a different option where you guys would invite maybe a couple of teachers, a couple of parents, a couple of community members, and create a committee or 2 that would do a round of interviews with those 2 candidates. And then you would have a rubric where they could rate and make their comments and share them. It's not to ask them which one they want. It's just to get their input. And then there's some districts that feel that you're the elected officials. This is the only employee that you directly supervise. If something goes wrong, it's you who are accountable. And so for all those reasons, we don't want to ask for any other input. We'll make this decision. And there's no right or wrong. It's really what you know of your community. I will tell you, from a purely consultant point of view, we prefer that it's just the board if we had our way.
Yeah.
Because Todd and I have witnessed, and I witnessed one time where a disgruntled internal candidate sabotaged the day in the district for both candidates. We saw recently, and we're not going to mention names, but in a recent one we did, we had groups with axes to grind tell candidates negative things about the board, and we lost a good candidate who dropped out after that. Bad things can happen.
And that was the
during
finalists, so those
these-
are down to 2 finalists, so
Yeah.
the board was left with.
One person.
Bad things can happen, and what we don't like about it is we can't control it. We can sit in, we were there, but we can't really control that. The other thing I'll tell you is, what is the cost benefit? What do you get from it? Very rarely is there a consensus on one candidate. So you're going to say, you're going to get 50% like this one, 50% like that one, so half of them are mad when you decide on the other one. I have never had a board say, that really helped us make the decision. However, there are boards, rightfully so, that believe in total transparency, that believe in community input, that believe stakeholders should be heard, and want to at least have a vehicle to listen to stakeholders. So we're not downplaying that option, should you choose to do so. We'll work with you to make it work the best we can.
I certainly believe that there's value in transparency and all those things that you just listed. At the same time, I think we're allowing for transparency and
front
community
end.
feedback in the front end. And so I appreciate your recommendation to, when it comes to the actual interviews, to have it be the board that participates. So that's just my input.
Yeah, that's good, Katie. When you get down to the finalists, whether that be 2 or 3, and they are considered finalists, the Attorney General says you need to disclose those names. So that's when those names would be in the local newspaper. That's when their picture will be out there.
When we're down to 2 or 3.
When you're down to 2
or 3.
If we
So
bring you
initially-
a 6, your law says we don't have to
Well,
disclose those.
That's why I'm using the terminology of screening. You are screening that. We're screening a larger pool. We're bringing another pool to you to screen further, and then you get it down to your finalists, and those finalists will have to have their information disclosed. So once that's disclosed, you will hear things from the community.
Whether you ask them
Believe it
to or not.
You will, because everyone will be doing their homework and their research on those candidates, and so you will hear from them.
I'm assuming if we do the informal thing, we're talking about multiple meetings then, right? You're not going to have the two finalists at the same day.
No, it would be 2 different days.
different days.
And it would be, or three, and it would be similar to focus groups, like the day we
We'd be
come
really
in.
full.
You'd probably have them meet with the principals, and you'd have them meet with this cabinet and a group of parents. It would be set up very similar to that day that Todd and I come in for focus groups.
On the screening interviews, just for a board kind of allocating time, do we have enough board members who could do some day interviews, or do they have to be evenings where we have to do like, 2 a night and maybe stretch that out over 3
Yeah, I
nights?
forgot, thank you, Joan, I
Yeah,
forgot to
so
mention, you
I don't-
can set
I mean,
these
because
up.
we have some members that, your jobs are important, and just as a group, do we need to keep it all evening time?
Also, how many days do you want to allocate?
Yeah,
I've had a district, we don't want to do more than 2 anytime. We want to
Yeah.
vote, not get tired, and so we're going to do 2, 2, and 2. The more common is 3 and 3. We've even had, some boards do maybe 2 on a Friday night and then devote a Saturday morning to finish up. I even had a group that only wanted to devote 1 day, and they devoted an entire day and did all 6 in 1 day. So.
and we are
yeah.
missing a key person who has got a pretty demanding schedule, and so I'm not sure we're going to be able to decide on that tonight, but as a board,
We have time.
I think we.
We have
need
time.
to- yeah.
If we could have gotten the dates tonight, it would have been great, but you've got to have all your members here with their calendars out. But we do ask that you do it within the week that we have listed on this checklist,
And,
if at all possible.
yeah, maybe we can add that to Monday night when we are all together.
And we don't have to decide on the extra community option tonight as well. So if that's something that you want to decide tonight, great, but if you want a little more reflection and discussion amongst yourselves as to whether you want to set up any participation with the 2 finalists and stakeholders. it's
I'm
up
in
to you.
agreement with Katie.
I am actually in agreement with Katie with that. Once we get to that point,
We're not looking for more input.
we're not looking, that's what we did initially.
Good for you guys.
We've gotten the input,
Good for you guys.
yeah, no. And
I think that's very
I
wise.
think Jack would be in agreement with that from what he said.
Okay. If anything changes, we can make a change, but we'll kind of plan on that not happening.
though we don't have a date that week, I would ask, and I can bring it up when we're deciding a date, that it's not on Halloween.
No.
Okay.
Please don't interview on Halloween.
I think we should see how creative they are.
Different strategy.
Come in
but
costume.
yeah.
That's one
So-
of the big characteristics you're going to put down.
So if all of this goes as planned, and we have no reason to think that it wouldn't, Todd and I are usually really good about keeping this on track. You should probably have a decision by the end of, by the middle of November.
Wow.
And you can either wait till your December meeting and announce your new superintendent and meet and greet if you wanted to, or if you had another meeting before then and you wanted to do it, however you would like. And usually the press comes out and it's a nice feel-good meeting.
Yeah.
And I should tell you that you're out in front of all other districts as far as where we're at. The fact that we're going to be able to post tomorrow for you,
Yeah.
we're probably, Todd, a good month, at least 3 weeks ahead of most districts. That doesn't always guarantee you're going to get a better pool of candidates, but it sure helps. So we appreciate the fact that you hired us early and we're ready to go.
Can we just very briefly kind of talk about how that negotiation goes? Like, are we coming back to
Yes.
the board with, if they have different terms of the agreement, do we have to discuss?
Again, and I'm sorry I keep having to preface every answer with, every board does it differently, but some boards that have bigger districts that have their own legal department, they will often just, their legal person would draw up a draft of a contract based on previous contracts and board parameters, and go from there. Other times, boards have asked us to be the intermediary. We'd ask Joan for some basic terms and conditions, and we have a template that we use, and we'd write up a draft for you and present it to the candidate on your behalf. You might not have an in-house lawyer, but I'm sure you have a lawyer on retainer. The biggest option most districts do is they have their lawyer on retainer using your guidelines to work up a template, and it's probably better to keep us out, but we're happy to do it. Many smaller districts want to save the money too from having to get their lawyers involved. So we're happy to do any of those.
Okay.
I think we've answered most of the last page questions, but there's a couple I know we haven't. So,
Let's just confirm, yeah, who is the district contact? That would be Rebecca or
well,
Brian?
that's the district.
Or
would be
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
I
or
mean, you could
Brian.
put us both on it.
I like
would-
that, Brian, okay.
Would be fine. We'll work together.
Okay.
And of course, your board contact would be Joan.
Yes.
Okay. And then, Joan, I'm going to be the contact for us.
Okay.
And we just like to have fewer people involved, the more direct it can be. And Todd will always help me with updates, and we like to give little newsletters of where we're at, how things are going, and we'll just shoot them to you, and you can share them with your board. We don't like to just wait till the next time we're meeting. We like to let you know how things are going.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You've already answered, the confidential search is when only the board is involved, but it's not actually confidential. It's confidential in that the board will be making the decision and not opening that up. You've already said you'd like a national search, but not a big intergalactic search, so it'll be, we'll hit a couple of those organizations and go from there. We don't have to talk about this tonight, but as Todd and I head into our own personal recruiting and answering questions when people apply, the first question they ask, by the way, is not the compensation. Can you guess what the first question they always ask us is? How's the board?
Yeah.
We're
That's-
great.
That's crucial.
Modest.
It's crucial to every
Brownies, I mean,
superintendent's life, is to how's the board. Our initial impressions of you guys are fabulous, and so we think you're going to be real easy to sell. You have been just the model of professionalism, and we've enjoyed our short amount of time together. So that's their first question. We'll be able to answer that positively. Their second question will be, what's the range going to be? And so I don't know, Joan, if there's a time you're already meeting and it would be nice for you, if there's a finance committee meeting or?
I mean, we could certainly
Closed
talk.
session.
I mean, we could certainly, I can share with the board, we typically compare ourselves to the 8 suburban Dane
Yeah.
County
Perfect.
schools
Mhm.
when we look at our administration and employee groups, and so I can certainly share that with the board, where that is at this time, and then the board can kind of decide if they like that range.
That's helpful.
Can we do that at our meeting a week from Monday?
At closed session,
Yeah.
yeah, the regular meeting, absolutely.
Is there?
Did you say close? I'm sorry.
You go. I was just going to ask if there's a professional survey that shows based on experience or whatever, how that salary ranges based on places in the nation as well. So like I know for mine, it's the International Organization of Packaging Professionals. They do an annual report. It breaks it down by gender, by age groups, experience levels, where they are in regions in the U.S. Is there something like that that exists for superintendents?
Dawn, there are such local variances, even within a state,
Okay.
that I'm afraid that really wouldn't be useful to you.
Okay.
But
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd have to go to search something like that out. But what I would have a pretty good idea of information about the Dane County group.
Could you also include a handful of the comparable districts that we've been using?
In the Milwaukee suburb
The
area?
Milwaukee, Fox Valley area.
That's what most districts do. They do their immediate area and then pick a couple of comps where it's a similar size, similar demographics.
And the superintendents that have newly been hired.
Okay.
Right.
And I do have LinkedIn Advance if you don't. And I know that that has salary information. I just didn't know if this particular profession, I'll poke into it, but I don't know if it's.
I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm familiar, but I've never been in that, so I'd be interested in what you found for sure.
I'll poke it.
And Brian, did you say that was a discussion, closed session?
Well, it would certainly go to contracts, so I think
I would
it
think
could,
so,
it would be appropriate for legal for closed session?
Yes, I would agree. That's
Yeah.
why sometimes when you have those open discussions, you could scare candidates away and they won't even pay attention, and I don't know that we want that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be what I would
Yeah,
lean
that
to
was-
if the board was comfortable.
Whenever, I wouldn't say that's urgent, but whenever if you can get to it within the next
Yeah,
X
and
number
if
of
you'd
weeks,
rather
it'll start
do
coming
that
up
to
once we
HR
start talking.
item first.
I mean, I think I'll keep in contact with you, Joan, to see where we're at, but I think I should be able to pull things together for the closed session.
Okay.
We've answered the focus group question. We've answered the way we want to do the focus groups. You might find this next question, is a doctoral degree a requirement? Most districts say we want the right person. That's not a deal breaker. I'll tell you why we ask it, though. It was actually my own district, which was a northern suburb of Chicago. And when I was leaving, they hired BWP, actually, and to do my search. And they brought, in the slate of candidates, they brought 4 people had doctorates, 2 didn't. And my board was outraged at BWP for, how could you even bring us somebody without a doctorate? It's a pretty affluent area, and BWP had no way of knowing that that was a deal breaker with that particular board. So we always make sure we ask now, because that was really embarrassing when that happened. I assume you guys are okay as long as we bring the best candidates forward? Because I do think you lose some really good people when the wider you can keep the net, the better it'll be. Okay. On a similar note, we have had districts say, don't bring us anybody who's hasn't been a sitting superintendent. We don't want to be the training ground for anybody. And I'll tell you, those searches were really rough because there's not as much mobility, lateral moves that superintendents make anymore in the last 10, 15 years. It's just not a profession where lateral moves are usually made. So guess what we end up with? People who have been fired, people who have been let go, people who had a board they didn't get along with, so they resigned before the board fired them. Lots of red flags. And then in the meantime, you could lose what we like to call up-and-comers who have just a gigantic ceiling but might just need a little mentoring that first year. So again, how about you guys? You're okay with an up-and-comer who's had, relevant experience where we know they can walk in and do a great job?
Sure.
And if you recall, we do a full year of mentoring for free. So we're there. Even if you hire an experienced superintendent, they're not experienced in this district. And people who have been very successful in one place sometimes have trouble in another. So that's why we'll mentor whoever comes in, not just a new person. Can I tell you something else too? We have been finding the up-and-comers, assistant superintendents, director of curriculum, whatever it comes from, they have been by far the better candidates. No baggage. Usually they're in an upward mobility within the career, a nice career ladder, and man, they just hit the ground running. So the last 4 searches I've done have all been filled by assistant superintendents. So I'm glad to hear you aren't going to give us that directive to not bring anybody else. Do they have to live in your district? Do you have a residency, either a formal requirement or it's not written anywhere, but you better live here if you want to be successful? We need to know what the honest answer is because, again, even if you get a Wisconsin person, there might be someone who has to, an upheaval for their whole family to move here.
I have a preference for it, but not a mandatory,
Yeah.
not a mandate. Again, I look at the real estate market, and I think we have to be a little bit real about that too.
And if they have a family with needs, I think we need to have the best candidate. If they would move here, that'd be a bonus, but I think we need to.
It's always a plus
yeah.
if it can happen.
It is.
In Wisconsin, yes, so the requirement, the resident requirement, that's against the law, so you can't require them any
Right.
longer in Wisconsin. But I've seen superintendents, who haven't lived in a community, but they're in the community so much that people think they live in them because they were shopping at the Piggly
It's their
Wiggly, they're doing those kind of
visibility.
things, whereas there are
And their-
superintendents who live in the community when they're shopping outside the community because so what you want is someone who just is a part of the
Who's
community.
invested.
Correct.
They're
Visible,
invested, they're
engaged.
approachable, they're
Yeah.
accessible, they're hands-on. I don't know you necessarily have to live in the
The
community.
concern I have though is, again, it's a little bit from the Madison model, and that's just that a number of the people who have, whether it's the school district or the municipality, their families live out of state, and I just don't see that as a permanency for a plus for the community. And I don't think they need to live in the community, but I think they need to live near the community so that they actually are part of it.
Point well taken.
From my perspective.
That's something we're kind of able to ask in the process. I mean, it's
Right.
not,
I think it's something we
Yes, you
can
can, that's not
determine.
one of the illegal
Yeah.
things.
Right.
of course.
And, I think that characteristic isn't essential, but I think we will learn about that person just through the interview and if they're, if they're agreeable to being here and being visible here, that's what's
Absolutely.
important.
Yep, so true. Yep, you'll know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we have successfully gotten through our list, and
Okay.
thank you for the decisiveness. I think we have everything we need. You'll get back to us on the exact dates of the 2 rounds of interviews and the salary range, but I think we've got solid dates on everything else. Did you have anything else on your mind about the process or anything else while we're here?
Feedback on the posting. I did catch the typo, thank you very much. I made that adjustment already.
Okay.
Because this will be the posting that we'll put up.
One thing I would just maybe ask you to consider under the district section, the community supported a $175 million referendum last November.
That's great.
I thought about,
And
Let's put that
we'll
in.
have a new elementary school opening 2 months after they start. And the construction of a new middle school will begin right around the time that they arrive. I do think that's probably noteworthy.
Absolutely.
yep,
Good ones.
We put that in Green Bay, and they were really proud of that.
the new elementary school's opening this fall, correct?
No, 2 months after they
24.
start.
Oh, the new elementary, and the construction for the middle school starts in the fall.
No, it'll start right around when they start. because Heritage is being, the school that is under construction will be torn down
Okay.
after this school year. That's where the middle school is going. So the new superintendent will be right in the middle of the $175 million referendum. So a lot of exciting things.
That is
happening.
really fun when you're, not that it isn't a lot of hassle, but it's cool to have 2 new schools. Can I apply? I'm very interested.
Why not?
So we
Thank
can,
you.
we'll add that, and then you can shoot it to Joan. Yep.
It's okay then, we'll
Yeah.
fix the typo, add that, and then let's get it going.
Get it going. Thank you.
Todd has had people asking him about this for months, so
Yeah, pretty
I
exciting.
think we're gonna have no trouble with recruitment. Lately, if a district gets 20 to 25 applicants, that's a pretty good recruitment. My gut feeling is you guys are gonna get more. So, the more the better. Doesn't always mean it's higher quality, but it's just nicer to have more people looking.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Joan,
you
if
very much.
anything comes up as you're talking, or anybody has a question after we leave, just, you can call me, text me, email me,
Perfect.
okay?
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
Got a new kindergarten
Motion to adjourn.
section.
Yes, we did.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I don't get it any.
I beat Joe, but.